Don't miss new episodes of So What Happened To, Saturday mornings on RatedEm.
Handheld gaming has always been behind the mark when compared to the big home consoles. Don't get me wrong, handheld gaming has some great games. I don't want to discredit games like the Pokemon series or Chains of Olympus or New Super Mario Bros. But these games aren't on the same playing field as something like Snake Eater. Oh, that's Snake Eater on a handheld console. Yeah, this just got awkward. So the 3DS was weird. Obviously, it had some great 3DS exclusive games, but in the middle to latter years of its life, and as the new 3DS console emerged, it randomly got a ton of ports of console games. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at a few of these ports, what makes them unique, and possibly find out why the 3DS got so many home console game ports. I briefly just want to mention before the video starts that I'm not going to discuss homebrew in this video. I know that there's tons of games that have been ported to the 3DS via homebrew software, but the main focus of this video is to point out how many home console games got physical versions on the 3DS. Also, this video isn't going to be focused on games where Lego Batman 2 on console was open world and then Lego Batman 2 on the 3DS wasn't. I'm not going to discuss games that had a 3DS version that released alongside console versions. That can be its own separate video on handheld ports as a whole, where I'll dive into games on the GBA, the DS, even maybe those Tiger electronic handhelds. This video will be focusing on the fact that the 3DS got a lot of ports of big games that were nearly identical to their home console versions. I'll start off with some that aren't that outlandish, and then as we go on, I'll discuss some that are why is this on the 3DS? The first one I'll mention was actually released quite early into the 3DS's life, and that being Star Fox 64 3D. This one isn't too out there, as the original game was 14 years and 3 console generations old at that time. On top of that, this one is a remake rather than a port, but at the same time, Star Fox 64 3D is so faithful to the original, it might as well as be a port, just with better graphics and updated functionality to work with the new console. Two more remakes were Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Again, not exactly ports, but they are pretty much the original games, just on a handheld console with better graphics and new functionality. For example, the touchscreen is now how you'll play the Ocarina songs rather than the D-pad like on the N64 original. The game uses the 3DS's gyroscope to allow for more immersive aiming, and of course, the game is playable in stereoscopic 3D. This one is a toss-up, but Smash for 3DS, is it its own game? Is it a port? Is the Wii U version a port of the 3DS version? Who knows? They both got the same DLC and had the same gameplay, but I believe the 3DS version had a bit more solo content, while the Wii U version had more multiplayer content. The 3DS version lacked 8-player Smash, but had the exclusive mode Smash Run. 3DS players could also connect their 3DS to the Wii U game and use their device as a controller, which is really cool. It reminds me of GameCube and GBA connectivity from way back. Okay, I just wanted to mention those ones as they are technically already existing games, but also not because they're kind of remakes. I just feel like if I didn't bring those ones up, someone would maybe ask about them. Now let's get into the more obscure ones that inspired me to make this video. As I mentioned earlier, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater got a 3DS port in the form of Metal Gear Solid 3D. The entire MGS3 experience crammed onto a 3DS cartridge with a few console-exclusive features. Now, Kojima is known for wanting to push the boundaries of what's possible with video games, and this is very evident in Metal Gear Solid 3D. One of the biggest features from this game is that you could take photos or pull photos from your 3DS's memory card to create camouflages for Snake to wear. The game uses the gyroscope when Snake has to balance himself on something like a weak bridge. The Keratins have been replaced with Yoshis, and running on the Peace Walker engine, this game has features from Peace Walker such as crouch walking. Not a major gameplay element and also a bit of a spoiler, but when Snake loses his eye later in the game, the 3D actually becomes unusable. This is kind of what I meant when I said Kojima loves seeing what's possible with video games. Now, from what I've heard, people either think that this port is really fun, or it's a punishment for humanity's sins, and there's no in between. Some people think that the photo camo feature is unique, and it rejuvenates the game. Some people think that the 3DS should have been the last console to port this game too. A big complaint I saw online while researching is that this game, without the Circle Pad Pro, an accessory for the original 3DS that added a second circle pad, was torture, and the Circle Pad Pro was almost necessary to play this game. The graphics are also inferior to the PS2 original, which does surprise me, as I feel like they're not that difficult to replicate. One that really boggles my mind is Street Fighter IV being ported to the 3DS in the form of Super Street Fighter IV 3D Edition. Street Fighter IV is one of the most competitive games in the series, and this threw all of it out the window. The bottom screen had 4 buttons that, when tapped, would allow players to do special moves. Special moves in fighting games are sort of a risk versus reward decision, as they require you to perform a unique input that can be interrupted, but if you execute them, they can let you maintain your turn and do some serious damage to your opponent. Having these special moves mapped to a single button eliminates the decision-making element that these moves have to them, so to put it in simple terms, Street Fighter 4 on the 3DS lets you spam special moves. You can do Hadoukens as fast as you can press the screen, infinite Zangief lariats, charge characters that don't require a charge input. This game's fucking busted. It's also just a weird inclusion on a handheld console. I think the fighting game community is aware that these games require good hardware to uphold the competitive integrity. They don't want to play on a console with an awkward button setup and bad graphics, which are things that do matter in fighting games. The Sims 3 was also on 3DS. It lacked a good amount of features and content, but it did feature the Karma Power system, which is a feature that is exclusive to the console versions of the game. Gaining Karma points allows you to purchase Karma Powers, which allow you to make drastic changes to your Sim's personality to shake up the gameplay. But aside from that, there's only one neighborhood, barely anything to do with your Sim aside from taking care of them, poor performance. This is one of the worst ways to play The Sims 3. Now the weird thing is that The Sims 3 was also on the regular 3DS, and from my research, it has more features from the main game than the 3DS version. Both versions didn't have access to the DLC, which I think is interesting with the 3DS version, as there was an eShop on the 3DS. I feel like they could have maybe put some of the DLC on there, but to get around this, EA released a separate version of The Sims 3 on 3DS that bundled it with arguably the most basic DLC. In 2011, The Sims 3 Pets was released for the 3DS, adding in dogs and cats to the game, as well as reworking the controls and including more to do with your Sim. Sort of annoying that it's a completely separate cartridge, but I guess that's the only way they could have done it. Luigi's Mansion got a sequel on the 3DS titled Dark Moon, but the original game was also released on the handheld, and from what I've heard, this version is inferior to the GameCube version. It is the whole game in your pocket, but the controls aren't great, and the updated visuals give the game a bit of an HD shine, but ruin the dark atmosphere of the original. A lot of people prefer the GameCube version over this one. Personally, while getting footage, I didn't really seem to mind it though. This is similar to Star Fox 64 3D from earlier. Luigi's Mansion is an older game, and as I mentioned, it got a sequel on the 3DS, so I feel like this one isn't too out there. But here's where things start to get weird. A few Wii games got ported to the 3DS, and even more questionable is when a few Wii U games got ported to the 3DS.
Need a new form of entertainment in your life? Join the thousands of others who have hit the subscribe button. Side effects of subscribing may include joy, laughter, and newfound knowledge about video games. Talk to your doctor about if subscribing is right for you.
These next few games are a big reason as to why I wanted to cover this topic, because what do you mean a bunch of Wii and Wii U games that were still prevalent on those consoles at the time also got 3DS versions? Donkey Kong Country Returns was released on the Wii in 2010 with a positive reception from both critics and fans alike, and was argued to be one of the best games on the Wii. But only about 3 years later, the game was ported in its entirety with some quality of life changes to the 3DS. DKC Returns sort of kept the Wii going, and that momentum was killed as soon as it was released on the 3DS. Kirby's Epic Yarn was also a Wii game that saw a release on the 3DS, but this one wasn't as jarring. Kirby's Epic Yarn would originally launch in 2010 and would get its 3DS port in 2019, so there was a good amount of time before these releases. Unfortunately, the 3DS port is inferior, as it downgraded the visuals and somehow suffers from FPS issues. While it did add some new content to give you a reason to play the game again, such as a new difficulty called Devilish Mode and new power-ups, it also removed co-op, which is a huge selling point for the original game. Wii U games releasing on the 3DS with very few changes is really obscure to me, as both of these consoles were sort of in the same generation, and I think that the demographics for both of these consoles are different. 3DS fans were okay with smaller experiences designed with the bring it anywhere philosophy, and the Wii U was intended to compete with something like the Xbox One or PS4, but I guess Nintendo didn't see it that way. Hyrule Warriors is this big Wii U game where you fight against big hordes of enemies, and it casually got a 3DS port. It features less enemies on screen and has much worse graphics than the Wii U version, but a big game like this is just casually on the 3DS. That's kind of crazy. There was some exclusive content on the 3DS version, I guess to make up for the delayed release. This included new characters and new story content, and there was a 2-year gap between these releases, but the 3DS version was seemingly treated like the Wii U version. It got the same DLC the Wii U version had, and even came with a download code to add the 3DS exclusive content into the Wii U version to bridge the gap between the two experiences. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker is a weird one because it got released on the Wii U in 2014, and then 4 years later in 2018, it got ported to the 3DS and the Nintendo Switch on the same day. Both versions include new levels inspired by the newest Mario game at the time, Super Mario Odyssey, but the Switch version got co-op and later down the line paid DLC. Aside from that, both of these games are nearly identical to the Wii U version. Yoshi's Woolly World would drop on the Wii U in 2015, and 2 years later would find a place on the 3DS in the form of Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World. Woolly World on the 3DS is the whole Wii U game with some additional bonus content, a new mode titled Poochie Dash, where players control a dog-like character through some new unique levels, a custom Yoshi designing feature, and extended amiibo support are just a few. For my research, this port isn't actually all that bad, and aside from the lower performance and worse graphics, some people actually consider this version a more complete experience. Unlike Woolly World, Super Mario Maker on the 3DS is considered a far worse game than its Wii U counterpart. The game still lets you create custom levels, but one of the game's biggest features is absent, that being the ability to search for and play levels that other people have made. The whole bit behind Mario Maker is to create levels, share them online, and then inversely, download and play other people's levels. The only way to play levels that aren't yours on the 3DS version is to either play the included Nintendo-made levels or obtain levels through Street Pass, which isn't inherently the easiest method when the console is nearing the end of its lifespan and people are moving on to the Switch. These last two games I'll bring up were exclusive to the new Nintendo 3DS, a separate console that offered better performance and included a second joystick. The first one that I'll mention is Minecraft, which used the new hardware to power its randomly generated worlds. It also utilized the second stick to allow players to look around as they walk. People have said it's obviously not the best way to play Minecraft, but it's fine enough. At the end of the day, it's still Minecraft. I feel like this hits an extremely tiny niche of kids who don't have a mobile device, because if you wanted to play Minecraft on the go, Pocket Edition is far better. It was at one point very behind on updates, but I think that it would have been around this time that Pocket Edition was somewhat up to date with the rest of the Minecraft versions. Pocket Edition has many more features and much better performance, and I feel like every kid who had a new Nintendo 3DS also likely had a phone or a tablet as well. Minecraft for 3DS is kind of just redundant. Finally, I'll mention Xenoblade Chronicles. The original game was released on the Wii as opposed to Wii U, but it was still this massive RPG game that got released on the new 3DS. While doing some research about it, it seems to look like this game was actually the reason that the new 3DS was made. I found this snippet from the Xenoblade Chronicles wiki that says that the devs told Nintendo that they were going to make the game for 3DS if it had better hardware, and I guess Nintendo delivered? But yeah, this big action RPG game just casually got crammed onto a cartridge. So what's the purpose of this video? I don't really know. I just noticed that the 3DS got a bunch of weird ports of like big name console games. But as I was researching for this video, on top of researching what I'm about to say in my own spare time because I want to buy one, my guess is that Nintendo pushed for these ports of these games on the 3DS to compete with the PlayStation Vita. Games like Snake Eater and Street Fighter 4 are kind of just weird ports, but entire Wii U games, I feel like these were put on the 3DS because the PS Vita had some really big games on it. Mortal Kombat 9 and Need for Speed Most Wanted are nearly identical to their PlayStation 3 counterparts. And while I've heard that Borderlands 2 doesn't run the best on the Vita, the fact that they fit the entire game onto a cartridge for a portable console really says something. Even some of the Vita original games just look better quality than the 3DS. They ran better, they looked better, they played better. The 3DS was behind, and maybe this was a last-ditch effort to make the console look better than it really was. That's my guess.